disampaikan oleh Pak Jokowi itu harus kita support. Peningkatan ekspor. Oleh karena itu kami dari Kementerian Perindustrian berusaha supaya produknya IKM ini bagus. Kalau udah bagus, standarnya internasional, ekspornya gampang. Jadi ke situ tujuan kami. Tujuan utamanya adalah bagaimana meningkatkan produk-produk ekspor yang sedang, mungkin kalau otomotif sudah banyak Bu ya, yang sedang digalakkan saat ini akan merambah ke bidang atau sektor yang mana Bu dari IKM? Ya kembali lagi ke otomotif Mbak. Karena ternyata Mbak, tahu nggak? Yang namanya di Jogja itu ada IKM logam, itu produksi peleknya go-kart. Nah, kalau kerajinan memang nilainya kan nggak setinggi kalau produk logam. Jadi nilai value-nya ya, nilai jualnya itu kan lebih tinggi produk-produk logam. Nah, kalau kita genjot ini produk-produk logam ini, komponen ini, berarti nilai ekspornya bisa lebih cepat naik. Bu. Jadi sebenarnya pelan-pelan kita sudah mulai siap ya bahwa IKM kita juga tidak kalah dibandingkan produk-produk dari mancanegara, dan ya memang IKM sebagai industri yang menampung sekitar 11,6 juta pekerja, tidak salah kalau disebut sebagai tulang punggung perekonomian bangsa. Ibu, sukses selalu untuk Ibu dan juga untuk Ditjen IKM dan Aneka Kemenperin. Sampai berjumpa kembali dengan topik-topik menarik lainnya Bu. Ya, sukses untuk Anda. Iya pemirsa, demikian Decision Maker, kita berbincang terkait dengan bagaimana IKM itu bisa menjadi tulang punggung perekonomian bangsa. Dan saya Prisa Somdatu pamit undur diri, sampai berjumpa kembali.
Nama saya Devisa Novel, jabatan saat ini di IDX Channel adalah sebagai produser dan sekaligus presenter program yang dibawakan saat ini dengan nama IDX Second Season Closing, terkait juga dengan kondisi capital market Indonesia dan perkembangannya dari waktu ke waktu. Dan saya sangat senang untuk belajar dan berkecimpung di berita ekonomi, khususnya di capital market.
Within last 10 days, COVID-19 cases in Jakarta went up 302%. Jakarta Selatan will distribute dividends of 40.6 million US dollar. Hello, good evening viewers. Market Headlines is ready to provide you a number of informations from business, economic and capital market sector. And as the pandemic is still going on, we will provide you the latest COVID-19 information. So please stay safe by taking some simple precautions such as physical distancing, wearing masks, avoiding crowds, cleaning your hands and having less mobility. But Lantai and this is Market Headline. Yes, viewers, Jakarta is currently entering a very critical phase due to the drastic spike in COVID-19 cases. Within last 10 days, the cases went up 302%.
Jakarta Governor Anies Baswedan said that Jakarta is currently entering a very critical phase due to a drastic spike on COVID-19 cases. Data from COVID-19 Task Force as of June 11, 2021 shows that COVID-19 cases in Jakarta jumped 302% in just 10 days. In the last 5 days, the daily additions of cases have even exceeded 2,000 cases per day, and the trend is always increasing. As a result, the bed occupancy rate in various hospitals in Jakarta has also increased. Currently, 75% of the availability capacity is filled. Meanwhile, the bed occupancy rate at the Wisma Atlet COVID-19 Emergency Hospital has reached 83.8%. As many as 5,000 of the total 5,994 available beds have been filled. IDX Channel reported.
President Joko Widodo reviewed the vaccinations for workers in the financial services sector at the Senayan Indoor Tennis Court, Jakarta. In this activity, the president was along with some state officials such as Finance Minister Sri Mulyani and Governor of Bank Indonesia Periwarjo and many more.
This morning, President along state officials witnessed mass vaccinations in the financial services sector, which was attended by 10,000 participants. Within a week, President Joko Widodo targets 100,000 participants.
Pagi hari ini kita melaksanakan vaksinasi massal di sektor jasa keuangan yang diikuti kurang lebih 10.000 peserta yang nanti targetnya kita dalam seminggu ini kurang lebih 100.000. Kita lakukan ini dalam rangka mempercepat vaksinasi dan kita harapkan juga segera terbentuk herd immunity, terbentuk kekebalan komunal dan kita berharap kecepatan ini bisa dilakukan di sektor-sektor yang lain, sehingga COVID kita hambat dalam waktu yang secepat-cepatnya.
The president said that the step was taken to accelerate the formations of herd immunity. Since the beginning of the pandemic, the term herd immunity has become to symbolize the point at which enough people will be immune to the virus. At least 70% of Indonesia's population must get a vaccination to achieve herd immunity. Jakarta, IDX Channel researched.
The trade surplus in May is one of the most important things to bring back the economy to the positive zone. Improvement of the export-import performance until this May indeed widened the chance of economic recovery higher.
National export and import in May 2021 grew positively on the annual basis. This is certainly a good news. Signs of economic recovery are increasing, being awaited by many people. In May, Statistik Indonesia reported export value of $16.6 billion or went up 58.76% on the annual basis. Likewise, import value also increased rapidly. In the last month, import was recorded at $14.32 billion or went up 66.68% on the annual basis. The increase in imports is also good news because most of Indonesia's imports were raw materials and capital goods. With the impressive export and import performance, head of Statistik Indonesia, Suharyanto, believes that the second quarter of this year, the economy will enter the positive zone.
Bahwa bergeraknya manufacturing di Indonesia perlu didukung oleh bahan baku baik dari domestik maupun dari luar negeri. Demikian juga barang modalnya yang nanti akan berpengaruh kepada komponen PNBP atau investasi.
The increase in imports of auxiliary raw materials and capital goods is believed to illustrate that the domestic industry is active. So that with the increase in export and import performance, it is expected to make a positive contributions to economic growth in the second quarter of 2021. Jakarta, Rajo Pakmo, IDX Channel.
Now to the global update. Company behind blockbuster video game PUBG, Krafton Incorporated, confirmed to launch IPO and estimated to raise up to $5 billion and jump to Euro 2020. The final 4 European Championship matches will be played at Wembley, including the final. And the good news is Wimbledon finals will allow full capacity within 45,000 at final. And more stories on International Minute.
Krafton Incorporated, the South Korean company behind blockbuster video game PlayerUnknown's Battlegrounds or PUBG, say that its IPO would raise up to $5 billion, which would be a record for the country. Krafton said in the regulatory filing it expected to offer 10 million shares or 7 million new shares and 3 million existing shares at the top of the range. This would be South Korea's largest listing, beating Samsung Life Insurance 4.9 trillion won IPO in 2010. The pricing is expected to be decided in the coming weeks, with listing expected in July. The final 4 European Championship matches to be played in Wembley, including the final, which is also on July 11th, and both semifinals in the preceding week will welcome the crowds of up to 45,000. This will be the half of the stadium's capacity as key supporting fixtures that will be allowed to open the doors to more fans. Moving on to the United States, New York government, Andrew Cuomo relaxed the statewide COVID restrictions. The announcement came as a result of more than 70% of adults receiving at least 1 dose of the vaccine. Social distancing requirements, capacity restrictions, health screening, and cleaning protocols are no longer mandated by the state for retail, food, service, offices, gyms, and salons, but may be required for individual businesses. IDX Channel reported.
Market headlines will be right back after this quick break. Stay tuned.
Kini aplikasi mClears hadir di handphone Anda untuk memudahkan transaksi Anda. Informasi aktivitas clearing dan penjaminan tidak lagi hanya dapat diakses melalui komputer di kantor Anda, melainkan dapat diakses di mana saja dan kapan saja dalam genggaman Anda. Fitur-fitur mClears. Equity clearing dan settlement adalah fitur di mana Anda dapat melihat posisi kewajiban settlement anggota clearing hingga nilai alternate case settlement serta informasi gagal bayar. Risk management adalah fitur di mana Anda dapat melihat posisi trading limit, kolateral, MKBD, portofolio harian, risk charge anggota clearing dan kombinasi, serta nilai minimum cash collateral. Derivatif adalah fitur di mana Anda dapat melihat posisi trading limit, margin call, dan informasi clearing derivatif. Terkait pinjam-meminjam efek, terdapat fitur mengenai borrowing information dan lendable pool information, serta lending revenue dan borrowing fee. Serta menu lain yang menampilkan informasi mengenai haircut, risk charge saham, dan nilai harga penyelesaian harian dan harga penyelesaian final. Selain itu, Anda juga dapat mengakses fitur pengumuman, peraturan, dan informasi layanan KPEI pada aplikasi mClears. Download aplikasi mClears di App Store atau Google Play Store. Lakukan registrasi user Anda dengan menggunakan alamat email berdomain resmi yang sesuai dengan anggota clearing Anda. Setelah registrasi, Anda akan diberikan kode OTP di email Anda untuk verifikasi, dan aplikasi mClears Anda siap untuk digunakan. Anda dapat mengakses seluruh menu pada aplikasi mClears dengan melakukan aktivasi berlangganan premium yang dapat dilakukan dengan memilih menu Get Premium. Download aplikasinya sekarang, lakukan registrasi, dan dapatkan kemudahan dalam genggaman tangan Anda. Kemudahan informasi KPEI dalam genggaman Anda.
Welcome back to Market Headline. Indonesia is committed to achieve the Paris Agreement target of the next zero emissions by 2060. And regarding that, the government targets the development of new and renewable energy power projects up to 38 megawatts by 2035.
Indonesia is committed to achieve the Paris Agreement target of net zero emissions by 2060 or sooner with international assistance. Minister of Energy and Mineral Resources Arifin Tasrif said that to achieve the ideal targets in national energy security, energy mix and emission reduction, a number of strategies have been prepared in the grand strategy of Indonesia's energy. The plan takes into account Indonesia's energy needs, increasing the trade balance and developing the national energy infrastructure. To support the 2060 carbon neutral commitment, the energy sector specifically targets the development of new and renewable energy power projects of up to 38 megawatts by 2035. The development of solar energy potential will be a priority in this strategy, that's given the relatively cheap development cost and a faster installation process. IDX Channel reports.
Regarding to zero carbon emissions, what is exactly the global carbon emissions target from year to year? And is it realistic enough if Indonesia targets zero carbon emissions by 2060? Let's examine it through these following infographics. First of all, we can see the total global carbon emissions target that is reducing as a year by year. First of all, in 2020, it is targeted to reach around 33.9 gigatons, while in 2025, it reduced to be 30.2 gigatons, and 2030 in 21.1 gigatons, and moving forward to 2045 within 2.5 gigatons, and 2050 by zero carbon emissions. But then, Indonesia was the world's fourth largest emitter for the greenhouse gases in 2015. Is it possible? We can see that the country is currently pledged to cut emissions by 29 up to 41% in 2030. Well, let's see if Indonesia can make it or not. But then, in the Paris Agreement, as many as 195 countries agreed to reduce their carbon emissions in order to prevent climate change. And this includes a commitment to keep the global average temperature rise below 2 degrees Celsius. And Indonesia became one of the countries that signed the agreement, and the country's nationally determined contributions, or NDC, is 29% with its own efforts and 41% with international assistance in 2030. And regarding this target, is there a scenario that has been calculated by the government? Let's check it out in the next graphic. In the next graphic, we can see two scenarios in achieving zero carbon emissions that is provided by Bappenas. The first scenario would be the peak greenhouse gas emissions in 2027, and then the zero carbon emissions target realized in 2045 or 2050. But however, there is a second scenario that will be less good at it. By the peak greenhouse gas emissions is in 2033 up to 2034. Meanwhile, the zero carbon emissions target realized in 2060 or probably at 2070. But then I would like to highlight this. Every 1 year shift in the peak gas emissions can shift 5 until 10 years of achieving zero carbon emissions. And the coordinating minister for the Maritime Affairs and Investment said that the government wants to accelerate the target of zero carbon emissions before 2060. And one of them is by increasing the use of electric vehicles and renewable energy. The government will seriously boost the renewable energy mix to respond to the climate change. But meanwhile, the Minister of Environment and Forestry also gave her opinion on Indonesia's carbon-free target. What are they? Let's see the points in the next graphic. Here it is. We can see the points which were delivered by the Minister of Environment about zero carbon emissions target. The first point is about long-term strategy for reducing carbon emissions in Indonesia lags behind developed country. And the energy sector in Indonesia will only experience the highest emissions peak in 2030. And the third one is that a possible target to be achieved is in 2060 with the several considerations: technology development, utilizations of hydrogen power, and other new energy developments. And the minister even said that Indonesia's energy sector will only experience the highest emissions peak in 2030, while several countries that demand Indonesia to reach carbon neutrality by 2050 has already reached their emission peak in 1979. It means that Indonesia needs to work harder because it is just starting to reach its emission peak in 2030. But however, currently the government has placed reductions of the greenhouse gas emissions as a macro development goal. To support the target, the government is also planning to implement carbon tax. What is the implementation plan? And let's see the next graphic. Here it is. We got into the main course of carbon tax implementation plan. Here it is. 75,000 rupiah per kilogram of carbon dioxide equivalent, and the revenue from carbon taxes can be allocated to climate change control and can reach around 29 up to 57 trillion rupiah in the first year if the tax rate is a 5 until $7 per ton. And to implement this policy, the government is deemed necessary to conduct public consultations. And Executive Director of Institute for Essential Services Reform, Fabi Tumiwa, hopes that the choice of the carbon economy value mechanism can change behavior and accelerate the achievement of the low carbon economy. And yes, viewers, effort to achieve zero carbon emissions must be continued to support it. And hopefully the achievement of zero carbon emissions is in accordance with the targets that have been set. Stay tuned because Market Headlines will be right back after this quick break.
Jika Anda adalah investor saham, Anda mendapat keuntungan di antaranya capital gain, yaitu keuntungan dari selisih harga beli dan harga jual saham. Dividend, yaitu pembagian laba kepada pemegang saham. Keuntungan lainnya, investor bisa memperoleh pendapatan tambahan dengan meminjamkan sahamnya melalui layanan pinjam meminjam efek atau PME. Apa itu PME? PME merupakan pinjaman efek sementara berupa saham dari investor untuk keperluan penyelesaian transaksi bursa. Apa saja manfaat yang didapatkan? Investor memperoleh keuntungan. Investor tetap dapat menerima dana sebagai pengganti dividen jika ada pembagian dividen saat sahamnya sedang dipinjamkan. Pendapatan yang diterima investor dari layanan PME dapat digunakan untuk membayar biaya penyimpanan saham. Saat nilai saham turun, investor tetap dapat memperoleh pendapatan hingga mengurangi potensi kerugian. Dan yang terpenting, KPEI menjamin pengembalian saham yang dipinjamkan sesuai waktu yang telah ditentukan. Menarik bukan? Prosesnya sangat sederhana. Investor cukup menghubungi perusahaan sekuritas dan menandatangani formulir perjanjian PME. Selanjutnya, jika terdapat kebutuhan penyelesaian transaksi bursa oleh peminjam, saham yang akan dipinjamkan diserahkan kepada KPEI melalui perusahaan sekuritas. Setelah proses PME selesai, maka KPEI akan mengembalikan saham yang telah dipinjamkan dan memberikan pendapatan kepada investor melalui perusahaan sekuritas. Segera hubungi perusahaan sekuritas Anda, Customer Care KPEI, atau kunjungi website kami untuk mengetahui layanan PME. PME, pinjamkan sahamnya, dapatkan manfaatnya.
Melihat statement dari Presiden Joko Widodo bahwa ada sense of urgency.
Welcome back to Market Headline. Let's take a look at Jakarta Composite Index intraday movement. So earlier today, JCI was opened at the level of 6,071.44, and then approaching the closing time in the first session, the index was on the level of 6,087.93, and the index was showing weakening trend by the second session closing time. The index was closed at a level of 6,078.57. In short, JCI went down 0.17%. Next, we're going to see the sectoral movement. Leading the dynamics of today's trading, we got technology as the leader of the strengthening trend that went up 15.22%. We got energy that went up 0.94%. And then finance as the leader of the weakening trend that went down 1.44%. And health that went down 1.37%. Moving on to the top gainers and the top losers, here are the key highlights from today's trading sessions. We got Arto that went up 8.32%. We got MLPL that went up 14.81%. We got MDKA that went up 0.69%. And Adaro Energy that went up 6.49%. Meantime, for the top losers for today's trading sessions, we got BBRI that went down 5.2%. We got BBCA that went down 1.31%. We got BMRI that went down 0.79%. And Antam that went down 1.69%. And next, we're going to see the intraday movement of rupiah towards US dollar. So rupiah opened at a level of 14,244. Rupiah was also showing weakening trend towards US dollar. It was closed at the level of 14,237. In summary, rupiah went down 0.26%. Cikarang Listrindo will distribute dividends of $40.6 million for 2020 financial year. The dividends will be paid on the payment date of June 23, 2021.
Cikarang Listrindo will issue a dividend of $40.6 million for the 2020 financial year. The distribution of dividends to eligible shareholders will be made in rupiah, referring to the Bank Indonesia middle rate at the annual general meeting shareholders on June 2, 2021. The amount of dividends will be paid on the payment date of June 23, 2021 in rupiah currency in the amount of 580.4 billion rupiah, where the amount of cash dividend per share will be determined after taking into account the shares bought back by the company on the recording date of Monday, June 14, 2021. After calculating the shares repurchased on the recording date on June 14, 2021, together with that, the interim dividend per share is 36.83 rupiah and will be paid on June 23, 2021. IDX Channel reports.
In order to strengthen its working capital, PP Property has decided not to distribute dividends for the 2020 financial year.
In order to strengthen its working capital, PP Property has decided not to distribute dividends for the 2020 financial year. The reason is that the company intends to focus on developing and completing a number of projects that are currently being worked on. As is known, the company's net profit last year was 89.05 billion rupiah. This realization decreased by 64.33% compared to net profit in 2019. Meanwhile, according to the Finance Director Denny Budiman, the net profit for the 2020 financial year will be focused on capital for the development and completion of current operations. Denny also explained that until early June 2021, the absorbed capex was 86 billion rupiah. Among other things, it is used for the completion of Lombok hotels, completion of malls, and several building renovations in other recurring income projects. IDX Channel reports.
Supported by rising revenues in the first quarter, property issuer Lippo Karawaci managed to turn losses into profits. The net profits reached 255.84 billion rupiah.
In the first quarter of 2021, supported by rising revenues, Lippo Karawaci managed to turn losses into profits. Based on the financial statements, the company managed to record revenue of 3.04 trillion rupiah, an increase of 9.89% compared to the end of the first quarter of 2020, which was 3.1 trillion rupiah. Revenue from real estate development was recorded at 837.4 billion, an increase of 23.47% year-on-year. Furthermore, revenue from real estate management and services grew 6.96% to 2.55 trillion rupiah. The increase in revenue also raised the company's profit and loss account. Net profit was recorded at 255.84 billion, or reversed from the previous loss of 2.11 trillion rupiah. This profit was also contributed by a decrease in other expenses of 340.42 billion rupiah from 2.7 trillion rupiah at the end of the first quarter of 2020. IDX Channel reports.
Step aside from market conditions as coronavirus pandemic takes big role on current economic situations. Here it is an update data about coronavirus globally. And the news close on market headlines today. Please enjoy our next program on IDX Channel, your trustworthy academic, business and capital market channel. And don't forget to always wear face mask in the public, keeping safe physical distances and washing hands to break the chain of COVID-19 infections. I'm Clara Wijaya. Have a nice evening and stay safe.